we have the pleasure of welcoming someone very important. Please welcome Dr. Onayoka. He is the Chief Executive of Cedarcrest Hospital. I hope I got that correct.
Yes, indeed. Cedarcrest Hospitals, Lagos.
Thank you very much. He's here to talk about cholera. Cholera. You know, I've heard this when we were young about cholera. Make sure your water is safe, make sure you wash your hands and all that. But to now see that in 2024, we are having cholera outbreak. This is something, I would not want to say we are in a third world country. Nigeria is a developing country. So how did we get here? It's like we went back in time. How do you think we got here? Why did we miss that this cholera became something that is now spread across 31 states are now having this case?
Well, Olumide, thank you for having me. Good morning to your viewers. I don't think it's that we went back in time. We simply did not move forward as we should. We probably made advancement in various aspects of life, technology, and what have you. But from the point of view of healthcare, from the point of view of simple hygiene, from the point of view of water supply, clean water supply, we probably haven't made much progress. And that is the kind of scenario in which diseases like cholera thrives. So we didn't go back in time, but we haven't made much progress in that particular sector.
All right, so what is cholera and how is it caused?
Okay, two things. Well, cholera is a disease caused by a little bacteria called Vibrio cholera. And it infests GI tract. It thrives on the small bowel. And it gets into the body by you ingesting either water that is not clean or you living in an area that has very poor hygiene. And those tend to be a deadly combination, really. And the usual route of transmission is somehow the water you drink or the food you have eaten is contaminated by feces. And that is the feces of somebody who inhabits this Vibrio cholera. And I mean, for the water that you drink to have become infested by human feces is pretty serious stuff. So that is what I mean when I said we really haven't moved forward, because that shouldn't be happening in 2024. But as we saw in the video, I was looking at the video that preceded us starting this discussion. You will see that such areas are still rife in our midst. And it is not surprising that people still don't have regular access to clean water and their environments are not that hygienic. And if you find yourself in that kind of environment, then at some point you will come into contact with water that is contaminated by cholera.
I'm so glad you mentioned the video we watched earlier on. That's a video of clogged drainages. So cholera is waterborne, right?
It is waterborne, and the transmission is fecal-oral. So it is from that infested water infested by, contaminated by stool material that you have ingested.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now, I'm glad you mentioned stool, because I know this is something we are well aware of. Our waste management, when they go and extract waste, I'm talking about feces, we hear that they go into the sea and offload that thing. Is there any other way we can, because somehow it manages to get back into the city? I know that when I was growing up, I lived in a particular area whereby when rain falls, they open their sockaway into the gutters. And of course, there's no how that will not come back. So what do you think we can do? How can we manage feces? We have pit latrines, we have whatnot, we even have people defecating. We have, signboards saying do not defecate here, but meanwhile, people still do it. What can the government do? How can we nip this in the bud?
Well, I mean, cholera is always a reflection of the level of hygiene and the level of poverty in a community. It's a disease of poverty at the end of the day. It's a disease of poor hygiene. It's a disease of poor sanitation. It's a disease of poverty. And if the right investments have not been made in the infrastructure that addresses these issues, then obviously from time to time we are going to have outbreaks of cholera. Also, if the practices of the people is such that Well, at times you can always say they have no choice. I mean, if you don't have access to clean water, you don't have access to clean water. But at times also, the practices of people somehow encourages this kind of dynamics that then makes them vulnerable to cholera.
It's interesting that you said it is a disease of poverty. In fact, on the front page of the Vanguard this morning, one of the headlines we read was that Sustainable Development Goals is a subtitle, and it said 63% of Nigerians still wallow in poverty. No wonder there's cholera, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, poverty, I think it's defined as people who live on less than $2 a day or, or something like that. And you can then imagine how far that will get you. And obviously, some issues of hygiene, issues of sanitation very quickly drop down the list of priorities if all you are just doing is scrambling to survive. So at the end of the day, yes, it is a disease of poverty. We might be called a rich nation, but certainly we are a rich nation of poor people.
All right, just to remind our viewers that you can also call in to take part in the discussion. You can call 08121820154. You can call us, and if you have any questions, you can call us and tell us. Now, also, you made mention of, yes, cholera is something that has to do with the poor thing, but I did an interview with someone also, a healthcare practitioner, and he also said another major cause of cholera is flooding, whereby when rain falls, our drainage is not it's not flowing. So he said that wherever you have things like well, borehole, and there's flooding there, there's that likelihood that that particular water you are taking might be contaminated. What do you think the government can do actually to this?
Now, I don't think this is rocket science. Just providing clean water for the populace is not rocket science. And there needs to be the will. It is not glamorous. It probably is not publicity attracting, but simply providing clean water and a clean environment for people is not rocket science. And I think if those who make these decisions and those who make decisions of which infrastructure goes where does funding go, if they will take this serious, because people die. Unfortunately, the people who die are not going to make the headlines, and the people who will make the headlines are not likely to catch cholera. So is that why this infrastructure investments are not made? I don't know. But certainly it is not rocket science. The will needs to be there. The commitment that we as a society, in the news of recent, we have been hearing that Lagos wants to reposition itself as a modern city. That is good. But a modern city shouldn't have open sewers. A modern city shouldn't have blocked drainages. A modern city shouldn't have human beings coming in contact with feces contaminated water. So again, there we are.
What about vaccines? And I read in a particular paper that the government was trying to get vaccines. Do you subscribe to vaccines for cholera, or should we just take care of this contaminated water once and for all?
Well, vaccines is part of the response to a cholera epidemic. Obviously, the key responses should be water, should be sanitation, should be hygiene. In fact, I think WHO even has an acronym for it, which they call WASH. Water, sanitation, and hygiene. Those are the bedrock of dealing with cholera, preventing it, and if there's an outbreak, dealing with it. Now, in that mix, vaccine also has a role to play. Unfortunately, the vaccines, about 2 or 3 that are available, you require a couple of doses for you to be fully protected. The 2 doses are about 2 to 3 weeks apart before you are fully protected. So if there is an epidemic, then yes, the vaccines will help you if you don't have it yet. But if you are already a cholera patient, then the vaccine is not of much use to you. But certainly in the whole response to an epidemic, a vaccine is useful, particularly because it also prevents, and not only prevents against cholera alone, it prevents against a few other waterborne, fecal-oral transmitted conditions also.
So you just mentioned the word epidemic.
Yeah.
Cholera is said to be endemic or epidemic. Could you explain, please? What does that mean?
Well, endemic simply means it resides with you. Malaria is endemic, for example. Endemic means it resides with you. And you don't need transmission from outside for it to manifest. The disease is there. It's part and parcel of the society. Epidemic means, say, the easiest way to describe it is it's an outbreak.
Hold your thoughts. We'll come back. Femi from Ikoyi, thanks for calling. Good morning. Go ahead with your contribution.
Okay. So it's a wonderful topic that you are treating this morning. I think cholera is not something that we should play with. But then again, the major work lies with the government. I mean, people always say government, but then again, it lies with the government. If they put in place policies and they are strict with the policies that have been put in place, so that people can, follow the policies. They say where there's no law, there is no sin. So if there are laws put in place, because I know I've seen people when it is raining, that is when they decide to dump refuse, into drainage. Even the drainage that is not enough, they dump refuse into the drainage. So I believe there are policies in place that are very, very strong ones, and if you err to that policy, you will be punished. I think to some extent, to be able to combat, cholera. Also, I feel the government need to do more with drainages. I mean, if I'm driving around, I see drainage, not abandoned drainage, walk, and things like this are what cause cholera outbreak. And also, if the economy is good, I think it will also limit the way people eat from roadside, and all of these things. I don't feel that if the government puts enough policy on ground, it will curb the menace called cholera within the society. That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much for that important thing. Now, he mentioned something about policy, which brings me to environmental sanitation. We used to have that back in the days, but we don't have it anymore. I know market people have it on Thursdays, but do you think we need environmental sanitation in this country?
Well, the answer to that is yes. I fondly remember the Lagos that I grew up in. There used to be this crop of local government employees called Wole Woles. And I mean, the fear of the Wole Wole man is the beginning of wisdom because they have immense powers. But if I could just refer to what your caller Femi just said, it is true that government has a role, and it's a very important role in terms of policy, in terms of investments, in terms of infrastructure improvement. But I think we should not forget the fact that we as citizens also have a role to play. At the end of the day, cholera happens by reason of a choice that someone has made. And yes, public enlightenment is very important. Public education is very important. What you are doing is very important in creating awareness and in making information available. But it is not unusual, not uncommon to see in the marketplaces a toddler is crawling around, stools at his side, and the mom cleans it and dumps the whatever has been used in one corner. And with that same hand, he's going to prepare the lunch that this 2-year-old is going to eat. So at the end of the day, we as citizens have a role to play. Yes, information needs to be made available, but we also need to make the kind of conscious decisions. Washing hands, it's simple hygiene, but it goes a long way in making sure that even if you come in contact with the cholera bacterium, you don't transmit it into yourself simply by washing hands. So yes, government has a role to play. Policy is important, but I think individual actions also plays a role.
We are wrapping this up now.
Yeah.
But before the call came in, I interrupted. I said, hold your thought. I was going to come back to that. Did you land on that particular thought? You were talking about cholera being endemic and epidemic.
Okay, yes, and I was saying endemic is a condition that is in the community. For example, malaria, it resides there. And from time to time, ever so often, there is an increase in the disease amount. But epidemic is, the way I can explain it, is an outbreak. It while an endemic doesn't require while an endemic disease doesn't require introduction from outside, more often than not, in an epidemic, there has been an outbreak. Something has happened that has then introduced that entity into the community or has caused it to flare up.
Which is the case we have with cholera, right?
Which is the case we have now.
All right, so we are wrapping up. Final thoughts on this. How can this be combated? How can we curb this? How can we stem the tide?
Two things. Government needs to make safe water available. Government needs to make the environment that its tax-paying citizens live in as hygienic and as clean as possible. For in the individuals, you need to have access to clean water. If your water is not clean, you are not sure of the source, then boil it. Safe sanitation, good hygiene.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kunle Onayoka. It's good to have you, and thank you very much for sparing time to come. We do hope to, of course, to get from you again, to have you here again.
Thank you, Olumide. Vivian, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.